Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Aldas, and in today's video, I've got another really good collaboration for you guys. I'm really excited for this one. It's been in the planning for a while, and I'm going to introduce my guest for today, and it is JB from Cars with JB. Say hi, JB.
How is it going, people? Very nice to be here. Very nice to be on a F1 YouTube channel when I literally only know about cars, theoretically. But looking forward to talking about, what are we talking about today, actually? Aldas.
So today, I'll introduce the topic. So today we're going to be talking about the younger drivers in Formula One. Now we know the Sebastian Vettels, we know the Lewis Hamiltons, but today me and JB are going to be talking about which of the drivers in terms of the young guys we're going to think are going to be like really big future world champions, who's going to dominate the sport in the next decade and a half, because there is a lot of exciting talent in Formula One. Anyway, just obviously before we do get into it, guys, if you do enjoy my content, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and check out my social medias, Instagram and Twitter will be above. And also, obviously, go check out Cars with JB. His channel is absolutely amazing. He is killing it as always. Amazing content. And we are also going to be doing some collaborations on my second channel, but that's later in the year. But yeah, today is all about Formula One. And are you excited? Because you said that you don't really talk too much Formula One, but we've had some good F1 chats. You know your stuff for sure.
Yeah, I'm chatting nonsense. I love F1. I've been watching F1 since I was about, I think, maybe 2 years old. So back since 1997. I think I've watched every season since 97, basically. So yeah, I know my F1 enough, basically, but not as much as you do, Aldas, because you're a very respected person in the sector. So
I'll take that. This guy, yeah, JB, mate, he always tries to one-up me. Like, I've only been watching since like 2012, but this guy, 2 years old. Anyway, right, let's get straight into it. So as I said, we know, of course, now that Lewis Hamilton has been dominating. In the past kind of decade, we've seen obviously the Lewis Hamiltons, the Sebastian Vettels, but it's the past couple of years where we've really seen the new drivers or the younger drivers really kind of start to make their rise and almost kind of really start to almost take over the Sebastian Vettels as we saw with Charles Leclerc in 2019. So I think it's kind of an interesting period in Formula One, and especially now, obviously, there's quite a bit of uncertainty, and it'll be really interesting to see which driver is going to come out stronger once we get past the whole quarantine and obviously coronavirus when we do come back to Formula One. But JB, I'm actually going to throw it over to you. Who do you think, in terms of the next decade, is in the best position out of all of the young drivers to really almost be the first champion that is not either Lewis Hamilton or one of the older drivers? I mean, who's your kind of favorite, do you think?
So I assume we're talking specifically about when we move on to the new regulations, first and foremost, given the fact that this is going to be going on for quite some time, the quarantine, and as we know that next year we're not going to be getting the new regs, which kind of sucks, but it's what you expect. So in terms of the next talent to come through then, I think Lewis will probably get his seventh first, and then when we move on to the new era, I reckon we'll see some big changes in the lineup that we have. That's a very simple and cliche thing to say, but I reckon maybe Lewis will go to, I mean, if he goes anywhere, it'll be to Ferrari. I don't think he needs to, but if he does, that's probably what he'd do. And then at that point, that will probably open the door at Mercedes for someone else to come in and get involved. And I would love to see George Russell jump in there and take the seat. In my opinion, the top prospect for this decade, I'm sorry to first see, I'm wearing my Ferrari top here as well, but like,
make sure you show it on camera. They need to see it. They need to see proof.
This is Ferrari, legit stuff right here. I love Ferrari since I was a kid, but I reckon George Russell's got it. If you look at his career thus far and what he's managed to achieve, he won GP3, and then he won in his first proper season as GP3, and then he won Formula 2 in his first proper season. Comes into Formula 1 in the slowest team in the grid, leads that team, and if you've watched like Drive to Survive, that's the one, and all that kind of stuff, he really directs the team in a way that you would never expect of a first year driver. So yeah, I think he's my top prospect for this decade.
See, I think that's really interesting because I'm kind of on the same wavelength. I think, seriously, George Russell is being underrated, and his rookie season obviously wasn't that great, and the fact that he got outscored by Kubica, it doesn't tell anywhere near the story. I think he finished ahead of Kubica on like 16 out of, it was like 16-4 in terms of the races that they finished or something like that. And I definitely think that George Russell is almost like he's the heir to Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes throne. I don't see Lewis going to Ferrari personally. I mean, it could happen. But what do you think about people like, I suppose, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc? Because I feel like he's going to start being a little bit annoyed, because just remember, Max is not really a young driver. The guy's been in Formula One since 2015. Maldonado was still in the sport when Max Verstappen made his debut. Like, it's crazy. And I feel like Max is quite frustrated that there's quite a few rookies that are being talked about, or younger drivers that are almost overtaking him. But do you kind of see it that way? Do you still, I feel like it's all about Red Bull, isn't it? Max proved in 2019, I think he's up there with Lewis Hamilton, maybe not right up there, but certainly he did a lot of growth in 2019. And where do you think Red Bull will be? Because he signed a long contract. That's it. You know, he's at Red Bull for the next, 3-4 years. Where do you think Max is going to be with regards to Red Bull and perhaps winning championships in the next 5 or 6
It's
years?
interesting in that you said at one point that it's all about Red Bull. I actually think that Red Bull is all about Max. So I think that if he's going to do it anyway, he's going to have to do it at Red Bull, because they put so much time and so much effort into making him successful. And he is obviously unbelievable. Like, there's no debating that. He's absolutely class in a car. he can do stuff that other people simply can't do, stuff that Hamilton can't do, stuff that other people on the grid can't do. But when it actually comes down to it, if you put him versus Lewis in my head for a long season, going tit for tat, I know who my money's on. It's always going to have to be Lewis, because however fast Verstappen can be, and however much he proved himself in 2019 to be able to consistently do that speed, you can't bet against Hamilton. Like, look at the dude. he's a 6-time world champion for a reason. He goes through this sport with minimal mistakes, and even when he does make mistakes and people are like, oh yes, he's made a mistake, he bounces back from them like it's nothing. And when I say bounces back, I'm talking Germany last year. Everyone loves to bring it up as like a bad day for Mercedes. I'm sorry, did you see how he went off the track, clarted that wall that everyone else clarted, and comes back onto the track?
This guy,
nothing happened. Are you mad?
Oh my days. And also, guys, he is a Ferrari fan, right? Let's not forget Charles Leclerc was also in that wall as well.
And trust me, with Charles Leclerc, Hulkenberg was in that wall as well, which was gutting to see. Obviously, the first corner as well, where Bottas spins and slams the wall. Hamilton spins. Does he slam the wall? No. And I think that's a real testament. You can't consistently bang out things in the way that Hamilton bangs them out. So in my head, Verstappen has a lot more to prove, and he hasn't proven it in the last 5 years. However unbelievably good he is, and however highly I respect him as a driver, you can't be in the sport for 5 years and have finished 12th, 5th, 6th, 4th, and 3rd. Like, if you really are a prospect, if you're the Lewis Hamiltons, the Michael Schumachers, even the Alain Prost, the Ayrton Sennas, you make your mark early. And yes, I would say he's made his mark, but his mark is more made in terms of our mindset of, oh, he's incredibly rapid on his day, as opposed to he's a world champion.
Yeah, but let's remember, hang on a minute, let's just remember he has not had the car that Lewis Hamilton has had, or certainly over the course of the season. Don't get me wrong, like towards the end of 2019, when you actually look at the title, like post-Belgium in the second half, last third of the season, it was super close. I think Hamilton still edged it in the last third, but let's be honest, Max has not had the car. So I do see what you're saying. I do still think that, a lot of people think that, you put Max and you put Lewis in the same car, Max will just blitz him. I still don't think that, because I think Lewis Hamilton, with the experience over the course of the season, he was the only driver in 2019 that scored points in every single race. That is ridiculous. However, I do still think that Max, yes, he does have a lot to prove, but we haven't seen him in a proper title battle. And more importantly, we haven't seen how he will handle the pressure. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that he has the speed. I mean, we've seen that obviously, but how is he over the course of the season in the same car as Hamilton? So I do kind of get what you mean, but there's going to be a moment where Lewis Hamilton is going to start to decline. I can't believe the guy's is he 35 or 34 years old? He's still in his prime. So, but there is going to be a time,
actually
maybe
quite
20,
rude.
30 years
It's
from
actually
now.
just quite rude at this point. Like, surely
It's
at
crazy.
some point you should just like do the good thing and just stop being so good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. These young guys are catching up. So because you are wearing a Ferrari shirt, and apparently this guy is a Ferrari fan, I mean, unconfirmed reports to me. What do you think of Charles Leclerc, though? Because I thought he was really good in 2019. Like, he made his mistakes, obviously, but at Ferrari, first year, what do you think are his kind of hope? What do you think he's hoping for in the next few years? Do you think he can be the guy that can kind of almost resurrect the Michael Schumacher dominance at Ferrari?
I think maybe he would like, as anyone would, like if I was a Formula One driver and I went to Ferrari, I would want to, like, it would be Schumacher. I would want to try and be Schumacher again. I'd want to take that ability that Schumacher had in the corners, in just driving, in leading a team and building it up. I'd want to be that person. So I'm sure Charles wants to do that too. At the same time, I wonder if he's going about it in quite the right way. I think that he is obviously an unbelievable talent. He's proven himself in the lower ranks as well, and he proved himself last year as well up against, remembering Sebastian Vettel, clearly not in his absolute prime at that point, but still, you can't just come out here and start beating a 4-time world champion. It doesn't happen. So yeah, I do respect that of Leclerc. The one thing that I couldn't quite hack last year was his arguing and stuff with the team. If you come into a team and you're alongside a 4-time world champion, especially a team like Ferrari where they've always had a number 1 and a number 2 driver, you're number 2. It doesn't matter how quick you are. It doesn't matter how much drive and determination, speed and whatever you've got. You're the second driver. That's how it works. So when decisions went in Vettel's way, yes, it's annoying, and as a racing driver, all you care about is being in front of at least your teammate, if not in front of the field. But I think he would have done himself a better service if he had just sort of bit his lip and said, right guys, I didn't like that situation, but I understand where you're coming from, rather than like the complaining over the radio, which to me felt a little bit theatrical. I don't know if people
I do get what you're saying though, but at the same time, he's a winner. He wants to win, and you talk about this second driver thing, but he's not the second driver anymore. I mean, there's already been reports that Seb might sign a Ferrari contract, and it's going to be for a massive, like, he's going to earn a lot less, and that's because he got beaten by Charles Leclerc. I don't think there is a first or second driver now. Like, you can't call Leclerc a second driver because he beat Sebastian Vettel. So, but what do you think? Okay, so just to kind of end in terms of for Max and Leclerc, who do you think in the next decade is going to have more championships, Leclerc or Verstappen? Who out of those two? Because they've been pitted against each other. Although I do want to say Charles Leclerc has reached the level of maturity in 2 years that it took Max 5 years. So it just shows you what kind of like strong head Leclerc has. That's that's not a shower. That's not like a massive like. I'm not having a go at Max. I'm just saying Leclerc is very mature. But who do you think in the next kind of quick answer is going to have more championships? Who do you see as being the more successful driver in the long term?
Such a hard question. I reckon Verstappen. I'm going to say Verstappen.
No problem. I've got. Oh, this is so tricky. Actually, do you know? I'm going to say Leclerc. I feel like he's in the better team, Ferrari, and also because I think Vettel, if he stays any longer, he's not going to beat Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc is going to keep improving and keep getting better. So I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc just because I think he's in a situation, and I feel I have more trust in Ferrari than I do in Red Bull.
Do you? See,
Yeah.
I sort of agree with that. At the same time, I know, like, I feel like with all these years that Red Bull have been putting into Max, and with him staying there for a long period of time, if they get it right, if they make it click, like, it's done. He's going to be at the front. Simple.
So so we've talked about like the really big young drivers. Now let's talk about some of the recent ones. So let's talk about the Lando Norrises, kind of touch on George Russell again, and even like potential, Albon as well, no doubt, and even maybe Carlos Sainz as well. So what did you kind of think of? What did you think of out of all of those four? Who do you think is like going to be the most successful? Do you think? Because for me, it's definitely George Russell. I feel like George is so underrated. People just don't get how good this guy is. Wait to see him in a Mercedes, and people will be like, hang on a minute, they'll jump on the George train. There's no doubt about it. He is quick. So I definitely think he's going to replace Lewis Hamilton. I've already said that, and I think he's going to be a multiple times world champion. I feel like Lando Norris still needs a bit of progression. I know he had a bunch of bad luck last year, and I'm not saying he didn't.
It was so unfortunate.
But even if you give him those 2 or 3 races, he would have still been 20 or 30 points behind Carlos Sainz, which is a lot in the midfield. So I still feel like Lando needs to learn a bit more, but obviously he's like one of the youngest ones. I think he's only just turned 20 or 21 or something like that. But who do you think out of those kind of other guys, you know, the Alexander Albons and the Carlos Sainz and the Lando Norris, who do you think has kind of the best chance going forward at winning championships, and kind of who do you think is going to be in the best car?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I won't labour the point, but George Russell, full package. He's there. He's ready to go. The man's ready to become a world champion, in my opinion. Like, I know that's like really blowing smoke up his ass, but like he bangs. See, that guy's quick. With Lando, he is. I was really impressed with him last year. A lot of people had sort of like differing opinions on how he goes about it and yada yada yada. I think ultimately for me, he was very fast in the car. He was able to take it to Carlos, who's been in the sport for quite a few years now. And I think also they've got a very good environment now at McLaren, which they were missing during the Alonso years. It seemed very toxic before. And now I think maybe the toxic team is somewhere like Haas or whatever instead. Whereas like... You've got
shots fired.
Yeah, well, by toxic, I don't mean that the team themselves are, but as an environment to work in, it looks like somewhere that I wouldn't necessarily like to work. However cool Gunther Steiner is, I just don't. I'd much rather be working at McLaren doing memes and having a laugh than getting told to come back to the pits and get in trouble all the time. So that's just my opinion. But either way, I think Lando, excellent driver. Thing is, even though I love I watch his like streams and his videos and stuff, I think he's really, really sick. I actually really highly rate Albon. I think Albon is such a story as well. Like, people like to focus on the Leclerc story of how he was Jules' godson, wasn't he? And how he's like this, I don't know, this figure for Ferrari. I think Albon has absolutely banged it out, getting dropped from Red Bull, coming back to Red Bull, getting into Toro Rosso, taking the Red Bull seat, absolutely boshing it out that second half of the season as well. I mean, he's boshed the wall as well a few times, but either way,
yeah,
I actually back Albon pretty significantly, because I think that what the guy has up his sleeve is the ability to learn very quickly. So the
only thing, I mean, as far as Albon last year, I don't think people realize it was a year period. Like back in 2018, he wasn't even going into Formula One or Toro Rosso. He was signed to go to Formula E, and then out of nowhere, and it's literally a 6-month period of him not even being in Formula One to being jumped up to Toro Rosso, arguably a little bit out of nowhere. And then and then halfway through the season being forced into the Red Bull just because obviously he needed to prove himself. And the way he coped with the pressure, like he set the same, we talk about Max Verstappen's speed, and obviously, you know, he's fantastic. In Suzuka, one of the most difficult tracks on the entire calendar, Alexander Albon set the exact same time in qualifying as Max Verstappen in Suzuka, and the amount of points, and he always picked them up. And just remember, if it was not for Lewis Hamilton crashing him off, he would have been on the podium in Brazil. Now, when you actually look at that race, it wasn't actually the best race from Alexander Albon, but you still need to be there to pick up the points. And I think he obviously got awarded, I think it was FIA Rookie of the Year, and some people were saying it should have been Lando Norris. When the pressure that Albon was under, and the fact that he delivered kind of low-key, we weren't really expecting. If he had a really bad time at Red Bull, we would just been like, yeah, it's too early, you know, obviously. But he's really proved himself, and I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do in 2020 or 2021. So yeah, that's kind of the newer guys. What do you think? Because we also, you know, we've talked about pretty much the really young guys. What do you think, and I do kind of want to give a word to these guys, Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo, arguably two guys that are really good in the midfield. I still think Daniel Ricciardo is championship material. When you look at, I honestly think that, I don't know if it was a mistake to go to Renault, but it obviously hasn't panned out the way he wanted to. But where do you kind of rate those two guys, the Daniel Ricciardos and the Carlos Sainz? Because Carlos last year was ridiculous. Like, he was so consistent, not maybe the best qualifier because he got beat by Lando Norris, but in the race, that is what experience is. And Carlos Sainz showed that experience in the race is what counts. So what do you think of those two
Danny
guys?
Rick, I mean, if he's not one of your favourites, like, do you even like Formula One? Like, I think he's one of the most legitimately, like, actively nice and interesting people to sort of watch. I think he just comes across so legitimately, and sorry, that's nothing to do with his speed or whatever, but he comes across as authentic, and I think that's quite nice. In terms of his driving ability, which is obviously much more important, because all we should really care about with Formula 1 drivers is how fast they are, because that's what they're there to do. He's obviously...
Don't you mean how much money they have? It's all about how rich they are, mate.
How much cash they have. Oh, they've got a lot more cash than me, mate. That's the key thing. But either way, I mean, he's so fast. Like, again, all of these boys out there are capable of doing some incredible things. Danny Rick, like, among the top, I would say the top 5 drivers in Formula One right now. Not that he's in 5th, but he's in that mix of the top 5 fastest drivers in Formula One right now. Sounds like a Cars with JB title video, but he is up there. I also just think, like, he's had some unfortunate situations in his career. Being at Red Bull alongside Max is a very difficult situation for anyone to be in, as we've seen, basically. So for him to weather that storm and come out the other side of it and obviously move on to another team and take his career in a different path, I think all power to him. I also think that, yes, he could win a world championship, but his days are numbered. The guy's got to be doing it in the next 3 to 5 years. Whether he'll dominate the next decade, I don't think so. He's maybe reaching that point of his career now where it's like, it's got to happen in the next 3 years, 3-4 years. Otherwise, he's going to go into sort of the Kimi effect and just start boshing it round in smaller teams and stuff, I reckon. I think
more like Hulkenberg, to be honest. Like, you know, Hulkenberg was in his prime like in the past two years, and it just somehow didn't happen in 2019, and then he was out of the sport. So yeah, for Daniel Ricciardo, people forget he came into Formula One 2011, like Jesus. Vitaly Petrov was still on the grid at that point. I don't know why I keep bringing these people up, but yeah.
You're just flexing your knowledge on people for no reason. Just quit it,
mate, this guy, I've been watching Formula One since I was 2 years old. But yeah, so yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, I absolutely agree.
I think Carlos.
It has... Yeah, what do you think about Carlos? Just to kind of round things off, Carlos Sainz, he had a fantastic season, was never really talked about as a future world champion, but do you think he's kind of turned the tide due to his 2019 season?
Mate, man like Carlos, Mr. Invisible, like he is a top quality driver. Number one, I've always been a big fan of rally, as I'm sure I've told you before, Aldas. And so
no, mate, he's never mentioned it, guys. He's never mentioned it.
I haven't said that in every single one of my videos. Whenever I mention the old Impreza or the Mitsubishis, no,
that doesn't really
either way, yeah. Like, obviously, his dad was a horrendously successful World Rally Championship driver as well. Someone that I always looked up to as a kid, and so then seeing Carlos come onto the grid when he first arrived into Formula One, I was like, oh, rich kid coming into F1, classic, because man, like original Carlos Sainz is he's got money behind him. So, but you need that to get into F1. And what I think Carlos showed last year is that he's not just the name Carlos Sainz, he is also an incredible prospect. I think the way that him alongside Lando, but the two of them have helped to rebuild McLaren, and also on top of that as well, Carlos's leadership of that team, incredible. Being able to lead it as like a nice, friendly, smiley figure, but get out on track and just absolutely bosh the car around and take it to people and not even get shown on TV and just be this like I don't know, man. So I think my problem is that I could probably take every single individual driver on the Formula One field and tell you how sick they are, as opposed to just
Lance Stroll.
Oh mate, let's get into that. No, so I was thinking about this earlier before we started the chat. I was thinking, like, could Lance be the one to dominate this next decade? And hear me out on this one, because if man like Daddy Stroll rocks up and buys Mercedes or some nonsense and just gives him the most unbelievable package, what's to say he can't? Like, what's to say he can't?
Sergio Perez, mate, nah. I think Lance Stroll gets a lot of hate, but I just don't think the speed is there. Like, Sergio Perez absolutely just clapped him throughout the entire 2019 season. Like, let's just be real about it.
And by the way, I rate, again, another driver, massively rate Perez. Perez is just so underrated.
For sure. The most underrated driver on the grid. So, yeah, again, so to kind of round this video off, we talked about a lot of drivers, but again, kind of a one-word answer or a little sentence. Who do you think in the next 15 years... Well, there you go. He's totally just finished that one. For me, in terms of who I think is going to dominate in the next 15 years, oh crap, I was going to say George Russell as well. Why'd you have to say that and show me up, man?
Yeah, man.
I'm probably going to go, I'd go with George Russell as well, but I feel like Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari and the team he's building around him, and the fact that Ferrari are improving all the time, they're in this kind of they're kind of almost restarting after Maurizio Bene left the team. Now, whether that was a good decision or not is down to them, and it's down to you to kind of judge for that. But I feel like they're in a rebuilding phase, and once Hamilton leaves and everything kind of levels out, I feel like Charles Leclerc is going to be a massive force in Formula One. But of course, he'll always have Max Verstappen. It's all about Red Bull with Max. So yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see who's going to dominate Formula One and be kind of the next Sebastian Vettel, the next Lewis Hamilton, or the next Senna. But yeah, anyway, guys, there you go. That is my video with JB looking at some of the young talents in Formula One and who do we think is going to dominate the next decade or and a half. So, JB, what did you think about what did you think about this video? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, mate, it was rubbish. I hated it. This was probably the worst way to start a Sunday morning, mate.
Thanks, mate. Okay,
No, it was really good. Aldas runs a tight ship here. He makes some good videos. So if you're not subscribed, don't know why you haven't here yet. It's right there. It's just down below.
Always gassing me up, you know. Anyway,
subscribe
thanks, man.
to this Ute.
Exactly. So anyway, like I said, guys, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like and smash that subscribe button as well. And let me know in the comments below, who do you think is going to be that one young driver that really defines the next generation? Or do you think it's going to be an amazing kind of a decade or decade and a half of battling between all of these young drivers from all of these different teams? So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments below. Anyway, as I said, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.